Translated via beguiled.com. Disclaimer: this is an unofficial translation and does contain errors.
The user's quest for hegemony 706th contact, Wednesday, 4 April 2018.
Since the observation and assessment of the United States of America, Russia, and the European Union is your special task, I would like to hear from you what you have to say in SS.
The United States of America and the European Union proclaim themselves to be democracies, but this assertive self-portrayal must not be judged truthful, because it is built on a popularly deceiving, popularly dumbing down and truth-obscuring lie. The fact and the truth are that both state entities, both the United States of America and the European Union, are each equivalent to a devious dictatorship. All state officials in every department act autocratically, and outside the will of that part of the population that decides and acts rationally and reasonably and strives for peace, equality for all, but also for justice and real freedom, for just governance, state responsibility, in its exercise, as well as for real democracy and for the fact that it is not the state powers alone, their advisors, followers, the military leaders, secret services as well as the economic magnates, but only the people who decide and determine. But all this is not understood and not recognized by a part of the peoples concerned, because they have no knowledge of what is to be understood by democracy, peace, justice and real freedom as well as state leadership responsibility. Consequently, they willingly follow the unfit heads of state and all the forces belonging to them in all departments, because they allow themselves to be beguiled and persuaded by words in their instability, their undermined intellect in their lack of reason as well as in their lack of self-decision-making ability. But if I have to explain what needs to be said about the United States of America, its foreign policy, and its real many-sided aspirations, then the result is a very unpleasant picture that could give the impression that the entire US people are to be slandered, denounced and betrayed, or in other words blackened, denigrated, maligned, exposed and disgraced. This, however, does not correspond to the meaning and truth of my statements. Nor is it intended to create hatred against the US American people. The truth of my statements refers only, and really only, to the fact that the whole unpleasant and negative assessment of the attitude of the entire US American government system is addressed, in which the leaders of the state, their advisors, the lobbyists in the entire politics, the secret services and economy, the religious system and the military power as well as that part of the US people whose attitudes are equally in line with the entire striving, leadership, financial and power behavior of the US leadership and the associated powers of all departments. The US American population respectively the people are not attacked with my explanations and statements, but only the attitudes and the executions and the committing of wrong actions, deeds and behaviors are mentioned, which are based on intrigues, deceptions, deceitfulness and criminal manipulations and conspiracies which lead up to torture, murder and war. This is because on the part of the government, with the entire apparatus of all branches of power, criminal planning and action is being taken in violation of peace, freedom, justice, order, international law, human rights in the law, and in a way that is sacrilegious, criminal, unlawful and vile. Everything corresponds to an attitude and an action, behavior and deed that can only be described as disgraceful, reprehensible and contemptible, abominable, ignoble, dishonorable, nefarious and evil. But what now needs to be explained with regard to the question concerning the United States of America is this: the USA keeps all regional states of the earth under its dominant supervision under strict control, whereby they cannot develop further, cannot strive higher and cannot determine themselves, but are as good as dependents and vassals of the USA, which believes itself to be the only world power and wants to exist in this way with all its dishonest infiltrations. For this reason the USA does not want peace, but hates it and does everything to keep all the states it dominates down with the same means of oppression and to keep them small and unable to act on their own. The USA intervenes interveningly and actively in the affairs of other states under its control, politically, financially as well as militarily, secretly, economically, and even religiously, when this seems necessary and beneficial, just as it interferes everywhere in foreign problems and circumstances that are none of its business. In doing so, however, they are tormented by the constant fear that other states, especially Russia and China, might cause them politically, militarily, secretly, diplomatically, and economically damaging competition, as well as that certain government leaders of other states, such as Russia in particular, might undertake a force towards world peace and encourage other states to do so. This miserable fear, anxiety, and threat of the US rulers, military, and secret services, along with various other profoundly base, low-level and empty motives, have existed since the founding of the United States of America, and have always led all those in power to thwart any peace efforts that have been made in numerous states on Earth since ancient times and are still being made again and again in the third millennium. Since the United States of America has been in existence, it has not allowed peace to come about among the peoples of the earth, because it does not want peace but hates it, because on the one hand it is afraid of losing the far-reaching power it has built up on earth, and on the other hand because it would have to give up its striving for world domination. From the US side, everything violent is done and undertaken at all costs against peace on earth and with regard to their desire for world domination. And this is being done first and foremost according to the power-driven will of those responsible for the government, the military, the secret services and the economic powers, but also according to the will of that part of the population which belongs to the government, the military, the secret services and the economy, and absolutely against the will of that minority of the population which is striving for peace and freedom with reason and intelligence and is also making efforts to achieve this with appeals and peaceful demonstrations, and so on. The incontrovertible fact is, because the USA neither want nor strive for a far-reaching nor a worldwide peace and also no true freedom, but want to seize world domination, that there is absolutely no will to bring about an actually truthful abandonment of nuclear physics, just as no responsibility and no interest can arise with regard to an end to the further development of even more dangerous and destructive and ultimately all-destroying nuclear weapons. Therefore, no efforts are being made for nuclear disarmament in order to free the Earth, in honest and reasonable cooperation with all other nuclear powers, from this scourge of fear and destruction that threatens the existence of the world, which was created by the USA and used nefariously and criminally in Hiroshima and Nagasaki and has since been constantly developed further and has become a danger to the destruction of the planet and the extermination of mankind up to the present time. This, while in their own country, too, they committed sacrilegious and reprehensible violations against their own ignorant population by ordering their own military actors, internees and private persons and so on into areas, letting them in and deliberately contaminating them with radiation, by exposing them to atomic experiments with atomic bomb tests and contaminating them with radiation. Of course, it could not fail that through espionage and scientists, other states also took up nuclear research and developed nuclear weapons of various kinds, creating further nuclear powers, and within the danger of an all-destroying nuclear war. And this danger has persisted to this day, and has even been rekindled by the new hostilities of the United States of America and the dictatorship of the European Union and various supporters of these two dictatorships as a result of the hateful and hostile machinations against Russia. Despite the partial disarmament of nuclear weapons, the threat and danger of the use of nuclear weapons and thus of nuclear war, triggered by the nuclear powers and armed conflicts as well as by extreme terrorist organizations in possession of nuclear weapons, is very great. Moreover, all nuclear powers still have more nuclear weapons than officially admitted, although not even this larger number of nuclear weapons would be necessary to destroy, and even annihilate the Earth to such an extent that all life on the planet would be destroyed and none could exist anymore. Just a small part of the officially known and existing nuclear arsenal of the largest nuclear powers would be quite sufficient for this. But to stay with the United States of America, of which I speak with regard to your questions, it must be said that in view of all the facts mentioned so far alone, it can be stated that the hostility to peace and the hatred of peace, as well as the permanent addiction to world domination of the rulers of the US and their supporters from the population, will continue far into the future. The irresponsibly power-grabbing part of the state leaders, as well as their incompetent advisors, secret services and economic powers, and so on, but also that part of the power-obsessed and warmongering elements of the military leaders and military-obsessed from the population of the United States of America, persist in the same delusion as was the case in the early times of the formation of this multi-state structure. Even then, many outlaws committed serious crimes just as many state officials acted criminally, because they were just as shamed, conscienceless and criminal-minded as many of their successors have been up to the present time. Even in the early days, the rulers in the USA exercised their power and abused the trust of that part of the population which was straightforward, capable and blameless, as is still the case today. But as will also be the case far into the future, also in undemocratic other states of the earth. Unfortunately, the peace-seeking minority of the US population has never had a chance to intervene in politics, to achieve a political turn towards peace with good, right and peace-demanding interventions. Even demonstrations demanding peace never achieved anything because they were not only disregarded by the government, military, security forces and secret services, but ridiculed or stopped by force. The population striving for peace, as a minority in the United States of America, never had a chance of ever achieving success, as was and is the case everywhere else in the world. Therefore, only the rulers of the state and their allied military, secret services, security forces, and that part of the population which is of one mind with the machinations of the state leaders, and their hangers-on and agrees in every way with all their manipulations, always win. This is in spite of the fact that the smaller part of the population, which thirsts for harmony, peace, freedom, justice, reconciliation and solidarity with all peoples and states, despite many pacifist efforts, is fundamentally disregarded or, under certain circumstances, even harassed and punished by the security forces and those who will be the rulers. In the same way as it happens in the United States of America, it also happens through the European dictatorship headquarters in Belgium, as well as in the states affiliated to it, whose governments and peoples are ruled by the European dictatorship and who in turn dictatorially impose strife and lack of freedom on their peoples. But in many other states, too, the same picture and events emerge because the peoples, as a result of their psychological cluelessness and lack of knowledge of human nature, allow themselves to be misled, impressed and deceived by false, deceitful and lying promises, hypocrisies and pretenses of false facts by candidates standing for election to government and other state offices. And this happens because the candidates for state offices and so on conceal their true lowly ruling and power-seeking sentiments behind false friendly, deceiving and beguiling gestures, facial expressions, gesticulations and facial expressions, and veil with false words of honor and promises to do only the very best for the people if they were elected to the office in question. And this they do, although they are completely contrary in mind and unwilling to keep and fulfill their promises if elected to their offices. As a rule, the aspirants for government positions, and other state offices and so on who appear in this way are only concerned with obtaining and exercising power and thus with being able to rule over their fellow human beings or the people. Another kind of people who seek candidature for government and state offices are probably of good and honest mind and will to give their best for the government, the people and the leadership of the state, as well as for peace, justice and freedom, and to work honestly and well for this with all the means and possibilities at their disposal. However, if they then get into their elected office, everything changes for them in a negative way, because on the one hand they are either suggestively redirected by their internal collaborators, advisors, leaders and dominators, and so into their dominating power behavior and brought to their sense and will. Consequently, they then act in the same power way and also behave dementedly. On the other hand, however, it is possible that honorable persons elected to corresponding state offices, who have all the good intentions for a righteous conduct in office and are also willing to reliably and trustworthily carry them out and implement them, are given no chance whatsoever that they could carry through their intentions and their endeavors. The possession of nuclear weapons never provides a reason to assume a hostile military threat from other states, to perpetuate this threat assumption, and to foolishly and illogically claim that peace security can only be guaranteed in return with one's own threats and a dangerous nuclear arsenal. It is rational and reasonable to consider and understand that neither small nor large stockpiles of nuclear and conventional weapons can be a guarantor of security and peace, but always only a guarantee that such weapons will be used without hesitation, and that populations will be murdered and immense destruction wrought with them, if any conflicts with combat weapons take place irresponsibly, or even if wars are instigated. And such weapons of all kinds are produced especially in great masses in the United States of America and sold to many states, whereby, however, only those are taken into account which, on the one hand, can be made politically, militarily, and economically dependent on the user through the purchase of weapons, but which, on the other hand, also become a guarantor that the used Americans striving for unrestricted world domination can be maintained. Thus, the arms sales practiced by the USA all over the world, as well as many other things, correspond to devious intrigues, which serve the purpose of striving for a world-dominating power through all kinds of intrigues, cross-directions, plots, infiltrations, subversions, government overthrows, criminal secret service operations and fraud maneuvers, as well as cunning manipulations and so on. For the United States of America, the use of military force has always been an option, and remains so today, tomorrow, and in the as yet unforeseeable future. Any other, peaceful and free alternative would be diametrically opposed to the foreign policy that has been orchestrated and carried out for many years and since the existence of the USA, which has always ensured that America can assert its political, military and economic interests in an international manner, as well as its world-dominating tendencies. The fact is that it is not the USA that must be afraid of enemies. Through its arsenals of war weapons and its military and air force, it is too powerful to be attacked by smaller states. Consequently, only another great power would have a chance against it, but many states of the world must have reason to be afraid of the USA, namely of the invasion of Forts Rest. The violent marches in. They must also be afraid of possible annexation maneuvers or forced final incorporation under the rule of the United States of America, caused by wars or any underhanded political, military, and secret service infamous machinations. Of course, the state and military powers, the secret services and those responsible for the economy, their advisors, and other hangers-on deny everything in this regard cholerically, energetically, and bitterly, as does that part of the population which is in every respect in bondage to these irresponsible people in state positions, and moreover, is completely ignorant of their real far-reaching secret machinations, striving for world domination and the intrigues connected with it. The USA is ready at any time, if it is of use to them or if it is a matter of their so-called state security, to brand foreign states as alleged villains without hesitation and to attack and completely destroy them under certain circumstances. And as it has happened in various countries since time immemorial, President George Walker Bush, who branded various states as the axis of evil, let the US Army invade Iraq with tremendous spreading of lies, as his equally bellicose father George Herbert Walker Bush did before him during the First Gulf War. And as is usual with the USA with regard to its world power ambitions, once it has invaded a country, it keeps it occupied for all time or imposes its demands, intrigues, policies and, if possible, its laws and so on the respective states. This is how Iraqi President Saddam Hussein was deposed and executed. If the morality of those in charge of the state, the military powers, the secret services and the economic powers of the USA is considered, as well as the bulk of those in charge of many other states, then it can be clearly and undoubtedly stated that all the irresponsible among those in charge can always find an argumentation for an attack and so on other countries, even for a nuclear attack, and this without any preceding provocation of the state in question that is to be invaded. That is the fact, whether it wants to be understood or not, because that is the true side of US foreign policy. All honorable, righteous and responsible people of all states of the world striving for peace and freedom are unfortunately in the minority, because a part of every people has fallen into the indifference and bondage of the state officials and the other state forces of all shapes. And these do not take their responsibility for state leadership and state security as well as for peace building, but act and work completely irresponsibly in the opposite direction, and that also against the welfare of the people. Therefore it is of no use if the reasonable people striving for peace unite, and try to relax the governments, and their entire hostile state apparatuses through peaceful demonstrations by demanding peace. So it is of no use if the minority of the population demonstratively formulates the wish to end the formal hostilities that have existed among people since time immemorial. Therefore, the attainment of comprehensive peace on earth and among men can only be a very long-term goal, which all states can only approach very slowly through reason and rationality, and in doing so must be mindful of and learn to proceed in harmony and peacefully, and to go along with each other in good faith, without quarreling, non-violently, amicably, conciliatory and compatible. However, all earthly states, and a part of the populations have always stood in the way of this goal, whereby the USA in particular stands out in this respect, which must make a great effort to become reasonable and give up its desire for world power in order to bring about peace for the world instead of fighting it as it has done up to now. Unfortunately, however, the USA is not making any effort in this respect, but is doing everything in the opposite sense to create enmity in the world among all states and peoples on the one hand, and on the other hand to continue its desire for world domination with all evil means and intrigues. A peaceful unification of all states and peoples is not in the interest of US foreign policy, but only the effort and desire to accelerate the achievement of world domination. And there is no doubt whatsoever that this will always involve vicious armed force, as has been proven time and again since time immemorial, whereby even supposedly good and moderate US leaders ultimately based all their actions and deeds on violence, war and the US weapons potential. Even the supposedly so sane President Barack Obama let this be known when he threatened at the 60th anniversary of the Korean War armistice to let the war beasts off the leash if necessary, which he expressed in really the following threatening words: "The United States of America will maintain for all time by far the most powerful military the world has ever known." Yes, we most certainly will. And this statement probably proves very well the true sentiments of the USA, as is also made clear by the fact that Obama prevented the disagreements prevailing between North and South Korea from being settled at that time. And how this so much peace-loving and reasonable Barack Obama spoke and acted at that time, completely contrary to all his election promises. The same picture emerges also at the present time, doing stupidly insolent warmongering threats, speeches, demands and confused orders, as well as the irresponsible actions and deeds of the US President Donald John Trump are closely examined and judged. If the global situation is viewed and understood from US perspective, then it is very easy to see that the United States of America is an overwhelming political, economic, intelligence, military, and therefore arms-strong power, which they use to make more and more states and peoples around the world dependent on the US and to dominate them underhandedly. And they also use this power on the one hand, to further expand their sphere of influence all over the world, and on the other hand, to prevent any other competing powers from beating them to the punch in their quest for world domination. But they also use their power to prevent the states concerned from working their way up and attaining power of their own. These are the three most important reasons for the United States of America to repeatedly intervene politically, militarily, economically, and economically in various countries around the world, as well as to carry out secret service actions and to cause unrest in foreign states. This would be the most important reason for all states and peoples of the world to make peaceful and reasonable efforts to limit and control the United States of America in its criminal actions and deeds in this regard and in its delusion of addiction to world domination. This, however, would require all states and peoples to stand together in unity and to act together in a peaceful manner in this regard, because it is impossible that one state and people alone could achieve anything to move the USA to a peace process. Ongoing attempts in this regard alone are useless, as are unilateral alliances with the USA that are only geared to its advantage, because such alliances are in any case doomed to failure in terms of peace and freedom for the sole benefit of the USA, and thus for world peace and freedom. The truth should finally be recognized that the foreign policy of the United States of America not only disturbs any attempt to create world peace and freedom, but never allows them to come about globally, which is why they continue their intrigues. And they do this by not allowing weaker states to emerge, but first supporting them in many ways, only to then again surreptitiously and unnoticeably contain and weaken them when they have developed according to the guidelines and formal agreements given to them for the benefit of the USA. The intrigues to achieve the set goal are manifold and range from trade sanctions to supporting rivals and creating new US bases in suitable riparian areas. Finally, because it is necessary for the US to gain power in the state in question, relatively small specialized US forces of various disciplines are infiltrated into the country in question in order to block its own power, destabilize it, and surreptitiously bring the whole region under US control.
And that's what I think the psychopathic and ungovernable of Trump will irresponsibly continue to do, and in my opinion do and organize all sorts of other idiotic and moronic things. There has been no talk for a long time now of what he promised, that the USA would withdraw from interfering in foreign countries' affairs. If he and the USA had done that, then he would have been a good president in that respect alone. But contrary to this promise, Trump, together with his advisors, the lobbyists and his other agents, and as well as the dictatorship, is interfering in the matter of the poison attack against the Russian ex-double spy Skripal, and together with the dictators of the dictatorship, is stirring up new hatred against Russia. And he does this by going along with the dictatorship and various other states as they expel Russian diplomats from the USA, block Russian businessmen's bank money in the USA, and other nonsense like imposing idiotic sanctions against Russia, and so on. He is also playing idiotic and dangerous games with the psychopathic, unadult, child-headed boss of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, and is playing the strong man, just as he is going crazy against Mexico with regard to the construction of a wall and the detachment of the Army or the National Guard, and is also proven with all his idiotic decrees that he is absolutely useless as a head of state.
More could be said about this, but the time has come for me to return to my duties and say goodbye.